Hey folks, we're back. This is part 25 of how to build a neck-through bass. For this video, we're going to be installing the electronics components, the pots, the potentiometers, the jack. We're going to prep the pickups. I'm going to show you how I do that. And we're going to do some prep wiring on the electronics before we actually begin the full-on wire up. And we're going to install the bridge. That's all happening in this video. So let's start with getting out the pots that we need. We need a concentric. I use a 250K. This is going to be for the volume and passive tone. Let's set that up here. We have a blend pot. And it has its own respected nut and washer that fits it specifically. These aren't the one-size-fit-all kind of deal. 50K, this is going to be the bass and treble stack. That. And then the other 50K, this will be for the mid-range. And this one has a push-pull on-on switch on the back. That's how we're going to switch between active and passive. All right, there's all that. Now, with this stack, this top shaft is a little bit long, and we need to do something to this. So we're going to walk over to the edge sander, and I'm going to show you how I modify every single one of these on every build where I use these. Let me move this real quick. Safety goggles are on. Walk with me, will you? Alright, here at the edge sander, kick this on. I'm going to take this down just a little bit, very carefully. It's kind of hard to see, but I've taken it down and given it just the slightest bit of bevel. That just helps receive that smaller knob that's going to go on there when it comes time to put those on, and it'll seat down nice and low without too much of the threads showing. Alright, I'm going to plug in, excuse me while I move this around a lot, plug it back in the charger. Alright, thanks for bearing with me. Okay, we have our pots. Let's see, first thing that's going to go in is the jack. The reason that goes in first is because it kind of has an awkward angle to where you got to get at it, and those pots would otherwise be in the way. This is a stereo, long threaded barrel jack, pretty standard. In that goes. Washer and nut. In that order. It won't work so well the other way. I'll cinch this down finger tight about as far as I can get it, and then I'll get after it with well, I've got a reamer and a wrench. This is why that flat edge on the inside of the electronics cavity is crucial. Without that flat edge, this becomes very difficult to do. Very difficult. It was getting to the point to where I had to redesign it after about a year or so of being in business, because that was one place where I would just get hung up every time. I couldn't secure the jack to the body the way I needed to. All right, while that's in there nice and open, I'm going to go ahead and tin each of the lugs. Just load those up. So first on the ground, there's the battery lug here, and then the hot. Just a dab. It doesn't need gobs and gobs and gobs of solder. Just enough to, you know, fill up that lug. I'm going to have to turn this. There we go. All right, that's loaded up. And then from there we can just work in whatever fashion you want. I'm going to go ahead and start with the mid-range pot. It's also going to have the push-pull for active-passive on the back of it. Now, before I put this in the instrument, I'm going to go ahead and prep the active-passive switch. And I'm going to do that up here on the table outside of the instrument. Let me think. I have a little drawer full of extra wires. This is just all cut-offs. I'm going to go ahead and tin the lugs while it's out in the open here. The top left corner, upper left-hand corner, I'm going to leave open because that's going to actually receive 2 wires. Okay, there's that. This is going to wrap around. I know it's really hard to see exactly what I'm doing. This is the kind of stuff that if I had a professional camera crew that could zoom in nicely, that would be optimal. But as far as wiring goes in general, how-tos on all that stuff, that's more of an intensive one-on-one kind of a deal, where we might need to look at lessons of sorts where we're doing like a video call and you know, probably, you know, a certain lesson rate or something involved, because that's much more intensive. It's taken me a long time to get comfortable enough with this aspect of a build to where any of this becomes instinctual. Now we're going to bring a long wire off this one that's going to wrap around everything and go all the way to the volume pod. So I'm going to cut this plenty long so I have plenty to work with. Just in case there wasn't enough solder there, I'm going to dab just a tiny bit more on to be sure that we have a good contacting solder point, that is. Okay, while we have this out, We're going to run a couple other wires off of this hot and ground. This one doesn't have to be terribly long. I'm cutting it long for the sake of the video. That's going to go right to the hot that I'll put on the jack. This will be the ground. Okay, that is prepped. There are two lugs open. You can see left middle and right top are open. That looks backwards because it is a reversed image, so my apologies there. That's going to receive the input and the output of the preamp. Put on the star washer and go ahead and put this in the instrument. We're going to take our 50K stack. Each one of these has a center detent, so basically it's 25 in either direction, boosting or cutting. This is the one that we prepped over on the edge sander earlier. If y'all see me pitching these little these hex nuts, it's because they come with two, and I only need one. I'm not being wasteful, I'm just getting rid of what I don't need. In it goes. Cinch it down. Now the blend pot. Let's see, there's a little tab on these that I'm going to cut off. Very carefully secure this down with these pliers. I use these because I don't have an exact size on my nut driver to fit. Alright, now we've got the volume and passive tone, the stack, 250K. We need to prep this before it goes in the instrument. So we're going to prep the bottom deck to be a passive tone and connect that to the upper deck to function as a master volume control. Hopefully this will stay. Let's get our capacitor. This is a .047 little ceramic 0.047 MFD capacitor. Pretty standard fare. I like the way it sounds in the roll off. It gets things nice and murky when you want them that way. Okay, that is prepped. We're going to go ahead and apply some solder to the lower middle lug and the lower right lug, as well as on the side wall of the casing of the lower pot. That's where the capacitor is going to connect and tell that portion of the pot how to behave. Being sure we got good coverage, good contact. That all looks good. Now we're going to take a short jumper to go from the lower to the upper. To the top left-hand lug, and that's going to share one that goes out to the blend pot. Now I'm going to cut this, and then we can go ahead and take this off and put it in the instrument. Let's see. There we go. Just a couple little touches here, little prep wirings here and there, and then I'm going to show you all a close-up inside of what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and fill up the lugs on the 50K stack. I'm going to flip the camera around and show you down on the inside here. There we have it. So we have our mid-range push-pull 50K stack blend pot and concentric volume and tone that has been prepped with this little capacitor. Okay. The next step on all this is to actually begin connecting it all and wiring everything up. But the first thing we're going to do before we move forward with all of that is prayer. We're going to pray. No, we are going to prepare the pickups. So I'm going to take this bass and I'm going to set it aside. This just arrived from Ken Armstrong. That means I need to pay him because there's an invoice. All right. Set that over there. I use Ken Armstrong pickups in a lot of my basses. They're fantastic. They are quiet. They do not give me noise issues. And they perform. They sound great. They're versatile. Alright, that's a neck marked with an N. Let's see if this one's a bridge. B for bridge. Alright. So when Kent sends me a pickup, the back of it is bare. There's no wires coming off of it. That gives me an opportunity to create more versatility. I can either wire up 4-lead conductor with a shield, and that can be hooked to a switch that tells the pickup how to behave, or I can hardwire these on the back of the pickup in a certain fashion, be it series or parallel. I'm going to wire these in parallel. This client for this build requested very quiet pickups. He wants no noise, and I share that opinion. I do not want noise with my pickups. So parallel, I have found, is the easiest way to get the most quiet performance out of a pickup. Series is still technically humbucking, but I have found, even with brands that are notorious for being quiet, that series in some environments where you've got bad power, lighting, dimmers, faders, whatever, series can be a little bit more sensitive and cause some racket. So I know very little about all of that stuff, the science behind it. There are guys that can run circles around me and teach me a lot more than what I know, but this is based off my experience. Parallel is pretty much a fail-safe for me. So that's what I tend to do when people request quiet pickups. Let's see, I have a little cheat sheet somewhere. Oh, it's right here. All right. First thing we're going to do is load up the lugs on the back of these pickups. All right. Just getting the wires I need. All right. 1 and 3, that's going to be black. Yes. I do know these wiring videos, I said it before, these aren't going to be the greatest as far as teaching the how-tos. This is more of an example of just showing you the amount of time and attention this part of the build takes. This would be the sort of deal where when there's a YouTube with a Patreon, maybe some more instructional style videos can take place with nicely zoomed in camera angles so you can see everything I'm doing very clearly. what I've done so far is I've got the ground going from lug 1, jumping over to lug 3. Did that same thing on the other pickup. Now we're going to go with lugs number 2 to 4 and jump those. Basically each coil, front and back, in each pickup has a start and a finish. Clean this up a little bit. There we go. Now, you don't have to do this with all pickups. There's some you take them out of the box and you just wire it right into the base, and that's fine. Like I said, this just gives me the option of doing it hardwired or wiring it up 2 switches with 4-lead conductor with a shield. Takes a little bit of extra time. I'd say it's far worth it. I've had some of these that I've wired in series, and they just are massive sounding. They own the room. So that's also something you can do. Right. Now we're gonna wire on the long wires that are coming out of the pickup that are going to go into the electronics cavity. Get in there. Now I need to put a twist in these wires, and here's a little trick. It's a lot of fun. Just like that. And there we have pickups ready to go. All right. Before we put those pickups in, we have to get our little battery terminals wired up. The reason for that is I run the batteries from the upper bout in this compartment through the bridge pickup into the lower cavity. That way when you're changing batteries, you're not monkeying around with anything in here and messing things up. Some people get a little bit ambitious when they pop open the cavity and they see all the stuff and they own a soldering iron. Bad things can and have happened. So I do my best to try and deter that by putting the batteries in their own separate compartment. That's what we have today. I do an 18-volt setup for my preamp. So we are going to wire these together. Basically what I'll do is I'll take the black and the red from either one, and that's going to be our connection. Cut those, strip, twist these together, and we're going to solder that and then put some shrink tubing around that. Shorten this up a little bit. Alright, we are going to extend the length of these longer wires. Here's something that I do. I don't cut them at the same place. I stagger the cut. The reason for that, we're trying to cram a bunch of wires through one hole, and having that additional shrink wrap around the solder point creates a much larger bundle of wires. And when you have multiple wires upon multiple shrink tubings, it makes a much larger bundle to try and squeeze through. But when the shrink tubing points are staggered, it makes it a little bit easier to get things through. So we get a black one here and a red one here. More than enough, but it's good to just have extra and not need it than need extra and not have it. Oh, we lost connection for a second. We're back. All right, shrink tubing. So you can see already, this is kind of a lengthy process, and this is only the prep work. This isn't the actual, you know, the heavy part of the wire up. This is all getting it ready to get ready. So the wiring portion of a bass build is a good chunk of the day. Start to finish, I've had some that are on the more complex side that consume every bit of, 4 to 6 hours. Right in through there, and we're going to feed that down through the hole. just like so. Now that we have the little terminals, or whatever you want to call them, the things that hold the batteries, I'm going to go ahead and put some batteries in there. Got to clean this bench off again, it's a mess. The reason I'm going to put batteries in now is that way they're in there and they're a placeholder, and they help firmly establish the length of wire that needs to be for everything to sit accurately in its place, if that makes sense. There we are. I'm just going to tape over this for now. I do have a cover already made for this, but I'm just going to tape that for the time being. That's, again, a placeholder. Oh. The red wire, it's going to get hooked up to the preamp later. I'm just going to get it out of the way for right now. And we're just going to tape it to the back of the instrument. And I was quite generous in the length. I don't need all that. The black wire coming from the batteries, that needs to go ahead and go right to the jack. So I'm going to do that right now. After that, we're going to get the bridge on and put the pickups in. All right. Trying to neatly tuck these wires down out of the way so that everything is just visually pleasing in where it's sitting. Okay. Let's get those pickups in. Pickup foam, put that in there. Got our pickup screws. and the neck pickup. The wood that these screws are driving themselves into, they're self-threading, is walnut. Walnut is not a terribly hard wood when you compare it to something like maple or wenge or bloodwood or purple heart. If ever the wings on a build have a very hard wood that are, something closer to maple, I will drill some pilot holes for each one of these screws, otherwise you're going to break them. And there's nothing worse than trying to extract a broken off screw that's deep inside of a piece of an instrument like this. Especially when you've come so far, to have to work backwards like that is just not worth it. Walnut, we're fine. No worries. Okay, those look good. When I'm sighting down, I want to see these nearly flush with the top of the fingerboard, but just under. That's going to give me the right height, pickup height to string height. We don't want the strings obviously sitting too close for both physical, giving the strings room to wiggle purposes, but also for tonal purposes. When you get, with certain types of pickups, when the strings are too close, you get funky, cluttered mid-range, wolf tones even. All right, last step for this video, and that is the bridge. Let's see, this one I believe is an 18 millimeter A style. Let me look here. That's A style 708. That's a 708. Let's be sure the holes line up, and they do. Before we put the bridge on, we have to get a ground wire that goes from underneath the bridge into the lower electronics cavity. So we're going to do that right now. Here's the wire. We're going to strip a good portion, just over an inch, like so. I've already pre-drilled a hole. The wire gets run with the stripped end looking up at you. And I'm going to secure it here with a piece of copper. That way we have good contact between the bottom of the bridge plate and this wire. And I'm even going to overlap that onto a screw hole. And I'm going to take it a step further because I really want contact. I want that ground to be secure. I'm going to take a little piece of sandpaper. This is 120 grit. And on the bottom of the bridge where it's going to make contact, I'm going to sand that and rough it up so that there's nothing that can get in the way, like paint. Maybe there was residue from something in the factory where it was made. I want definite contact so I get a solid ground. Alright, obviously when you're doing this, be careful not to sand the top. You don't want to sand the paint off your bridge. The good folks at Hipshot work really hard at making these look nice. But once you have established a good roughed up portion of this aluminum or brass, whichever material you use, that is peace of mind, knowing that you have good contact. Alright, we're going to set that down, and we're going to install this bridge. Nice and straight, and follow up by hand. You don't want to over torque these screws with the drill because they can break. It's happened before, and it's a terrible thing to have to do to fix that. So now it's starting to look like a bass. Alrighty. Well, that concludes part 25 of this video series. The next part is going to be the long drawn-out wire up, the complete wire up, and we're going to be sure everything works. We're going to tap test the pickups once everything is all cinched up. That'll be part 26, so stick around for that. Thanks for watching. See you next time.